Well, good evening. Welcome, everybody, and welcome Dr. John Kulin. Dr. Kulin is a board-certified emergency physician and urgent care physician. He has spent the last 34 years in active medical practice, with the past 20 years focused on urgent care medicine. He has also served in multiple entrepreneurial and leadership roles in hospital-based and ambulatory medical practices, as well as clinically integrated networks. John has provided leadership and consulting to hospitals, corporations, clinically integrated networks, and ambulatory practices, including multi and single specialty groups. He consults organizations on their provider engagement, workflow, billing and coding, and strategies. Among other things, he was one of the founders and president of the Northeast Regional Urgent Care Association, a president of the Urgent Care Association Company, chairman of emergency medicine at Southern Ocean County Hospital, and medical director for clinical informatics at Summit Health. He's going to talk to us about guiding patients on safe cannabis use. Dr. Kulin, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Blumenthal. Appreciate the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to share my screen with you because we'll be able to share some slides. Let me go there. Okay. So tonight, what we'll do, right now we have a small group if that changes, but try and go through. There's a lot of topics to talk about. And with that too, there's a lot of things that we won't be able to get to. This is a very detailed subject in many ways, but it'll be an overview for many of you, hopefully a refresher for some, but be new information for others also. So this is my focus really wants to be about having conversations with cannabis patients. And let's come on, if I get my screen to move. There we go. Okay. So goals tonight, want to understand the legal use of cannabis in New Jersey, understand cannabis use as medication, and have a basic knowledge to discuss cannabis use with patients. So with that, just some level setting for us. So the current medical cannabis market, realized that was initially opened up in 2010, but took a number of years to really come along. But about in the past 4 years, I think the peak was 3 or 4 years ago. It was about 110,000 patients were registered in the medical marijuana program in New Jersey. As of this past September, it's 55,000. That's been decreasing. With that same thing, and just so you understand the different markets, the sales in New Jersey in that was about 65 million for the past year from July through June. I wanted to compare that with the adult use market, which sometimes is termed the recreational market, but I prefer adult use as a term, and we'll note that distinction. That opened, actually, I got a mistake here. It opened in 2022. It opened in earnest in 23 as more than the original medical dispensaries were able to join in. So if we look there, sales in that market, July 24th through June 25th, is about $1.05 billion. The full year estimate for 2025, where we're just finishing out soon, is $1.2 billion. And in New Jersey, there's an estimated 800,000 adult cannabis users. So I think that's an important statistic because that's about 1 in 11 adults. And this is only adults we're talking over the age of 21. None of this, and just even to go forward, none of this will focus on, at least even dealing with underage use, and we'll talk about why that is in a little bit in terms of the relation with the federal government. So one of the things, and admittedly, I'm going to say, as we go into my journey, Larry's part of that with getting me involved Larry, I think was it 2016 with the where we're trying to had the sessions on the opiate crisis with the medical society and everything. But got me really looking at all this, and it was a bunch of different things. So I think it's important to realize in just we'll say drug use in general, we'll call it. In 2024, in New Jersey alone, this from CDC statistics, we had 1,985 overdose deaths related to in New Jersey in general. Out of that, 1,653 were opiates. 275 of that was prescription opiates. And then we had another 304 that were benzodiazepines. Of note here, there are no reported overdose deaths related to cannabis. Overdose on cannabis is not death, it's hangover for people. Doesn't mean it's not going to make them feel lousy, but they're not going to die. There's no respiratory depression, no other things, and there's been no reported deaths strictly related to cannabis. Of note there to the last stats that are available was 2021, where we have about 3,576 alcohol-related deaths in the state of New Jersey. So it kind of puts things in perspective, at least for me in many ways. So I want to go on where we talk about why do we have a legal cannabis market in New Jersey? Because we all know that cannabis is federally illegal. It's a Schedule I drug / medication, where on the federal side there is no known safe use, and that will stay that way for now. And there's a bunch of discussion around that. Deschedulization is problematic in many ways, and probably we could take an hour just talking about that. So the New Jersey market and the state markets in general exist due to a compact between the state and the federal Department of Justice. There's really 8 things, but I put the three major things. There's 8 components of that compact that the DOJ has with the states. The most important are: 1, it must prevent diversion to minors. 2, must prevent trafficking across state lines. So all cannabis sold legally in New Jersey is grown in New Jersey, and or manufactured in New Jersey. There is no cannabis going across state lines into Pennsylvania, Delaware, or coming into New Jersey legally. And then must have robust regulation of cannabis in place. So that's the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Guides all that, both for the medical, the true medical market, patients with a medical card, and for the adult use market. These things are important and kind of hallmarks of the, of legal cannabis, and must be in place. So a little bit just background, some of you, a couple people know me well on the call here. 34 years in practice, originally emergency medicine, went into urgent care 20 years ago, and that's been my focus over that time. I began prescribing about 7 years ago on the medical marijuana side, and that was through a series of things. I call it my journey because I think we all grew up in cannabis is bad. There's no legal purpose going on. There's no medical purpose for cannabis. So it was a series of things I mentioned before. The program that MSNJ, the Hospital Association, and the Insurance Association sponsored in New Jersey about the opiate crisis. And one of the biggest things that came out of that for me, there are multiple things I learned on that, was realizing there's no safe level of opiates. And that was a huge thing. Actually got me also, part of this was we start prescribing Suboxone in our practice. About half of our providers became Suboxone prescribers in an urgent care practice, and working with our behavioral health team very closely and handing off patients to them. But that kind of coincided in there. One of my business partners became disabled after a minor medical procedure went awry. And this is someone at 50 years old at that point that was vibrant, active. Suddenly, bad days was wheelchair, good days was cane, and it was life changing for this person, and just was terrible to see, and all from a medical procedure. So it was interesting. They had being prescribed loads of typical medications, trying everything, spinal cord stimulators implanted, all sorts of things. Finally, one of her pain management docs said, let's try in the medical marijuana program, turn their life around. They're actively working again and not at a desk job, actively working again in in a job where they're on their feet all the time and doing that, which just amazed me seeing this transition. And this is a person who medicates, as I'll say, throughout the day, and you would never realize that they're using cannabis at all, because they're using it to be functional, not to be high. And that's a key distinction of people using cannabis for medical reasons, is they're just trying to be functional, trying to decrease their pain, trying to decrease their anxiety, many other things. There's a bunch of different reasons that using cannabis, but this really got me researching about cannabis and medicine and everything, and just going on and realizing that in some of the other mature states where there was more mature markets, a lot of people who even buy in the adult use market in these states are actually have qualifying medical conditions, but just don't get a medical card. Don't do it under the guise of a physician. We were just discussing before, the two most common reasons in past studies in other states, and that was they don't trust the government, go figure, and they didn't want their name on a list, and or they don't want to give up firearms permit. I always find it interesting these days that you can drink a bottle of wine, a fifth of vodka, and still own a firearm, but you can't take a cannabis gummy at bedtime and own a firearm. And that's so it's a realization there's still a lot of stigma and a lot of practice around cannabis that will mature with time, because it's still something fairly new and we're all adjusting to it. So that's kind of what got me into this, and it's been quite the exploration, and seeing in my own prescribing practice the number of patients that have gotten completely off opiates, completely off benzodiazepines. I will tell you, out of all my patients, I have less than 5 that still use any degree of opiates. It's been kind of wonderful to see, and the most of that is half of what they used before. I would love to get them all off completely, but everyone's a little different in this. So we do what we can. I consider that a win. So basics overall, I'm going to say all medications have side effects. We all know blood pressure medications have side effects, cause patients to stop. Everything does, we'll say. Cannabis has effects and side effects like all other medications, and typically this is dose related. With this, and I'm not going to go into specific uses, studies tonight, everything like that, but I find it funny where now we're seeing. I'm sure most of us are familiar with hyperemesis, cannabis, overuse syndrome, and that affects. We're seeing that mostly with patients, and I think all with patients, but I'll say mostly at this point because the studies are still ongoing, with patients that are using very high THC. And high THC, where we talk about 30 to 40% THC. There's strains on the market right now in New Jersey that are 40% THC. The interesting thing is, in terms of effects, low THC cannabis, cannabis strains that are in the 10 to 12% range actually help with vomiting and nausea. They will decrease nauseousness for patients / consumers that have GI or other medication related nausea and other things. So we're seeing, like a lot of our things, we're learning the dose related effects and side effects of these medication, of this as a medication as we're going on. Just quickly related to that, there was I just saw a study last week where again, at the lower dose where we're seeing low THC in that 10 to 12% range, there was a double-blinded study that was done on dementia patients, and we saw a significant leveling off instead of worsening over time of their testing. What we ended up seeing was that it kind of plateaued and leveled off their testing instead of seeing them get worse. And so this is the fact that that research has just opened up in the U.S. over the past couple of years on this. It's interesting what we're seeing and how many new studies are coming out, and so we could spend time just talking through those. I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, many patients / consumers, and I'll use it interchangeably in my thinking most of the time, using cannabis to be functional. I've seen this multiple times where people function better, are able to function in social situations, other stuff, using cannabis, and even just using cannabis at bedtime with the long-lasting effect of calming through the rest of it. Most of my pain patients that I have are just taking gummies or smoking, at bedtime or in the late evening, actually getting a decent night's sleep, being out of pain, getting their pain level down to a 3 or a 4 instead of a 7 or 8. And now they're able to function and be a more normal person the next day, work, do other things, and without that high that we associate with cannabis, that THC effect. Here I will say we're learning in something which you may hear at our time, something that's called the entourage effect. And we're still learning about, we'll talk about other cannabinoids and terpenes and everything, but THC is part of it. It's not the only thing. If we look back at Marinol, which was a THC isolate, why it worked for some patients, didn't for others, was hit or miss over all these years. And that's because it was an isolate, didn't have these other components in there that work together to make it more effective under different circumstances. So just some background on cannabis in general. We'll talk about cannabis 101. Genus, there's overall types of cannabis. There's indica, which tends to be calming, sativas, which tend to be uplifting, and then hybrids, which are more balanced. This is very rudimentary because now, realistically, all the different strains over the years, everything, there is no true indica or true sativa really out there anymore being bred. Everything's a hybrid, but is it more indica leaning? Is it more sativa leaning? Is it that true middle of the road balanced amongst them? It really depends on a lot of different factors. But if in just talking with patients, understanding, are they looking for those indica effects, the more calming, sedating? Are they looking for the sativa effects, the uplifting, or just something more balanced? And a lot of these gummies and stuff are made one way or another for that. So let's talk a little bit about cannabinoids. Okay, in there, cannabinoids are part of what makes up that, and realize that THC, delta 9 THC is the most well known, but only one of the cannabinoids. Okay, that's the psychoactive component. That's what tends to give people the head high, euphoria, relaxation, pain relief. Like we talked before, dose-related anti-nausea. It can be the other way at high doses, but that's only one of the things. What we're seeing in the markets these days out there with consumers, and even just we're talking for bud tenders, which is what the title is for people who work in dispensary and advise or help people with purchases of cannabis. They're really, I hate to say, too many of them are focused on THC. It's something we have to get past. My discussion many times with patients and others is, do you go, they go for the high THC because they want to get their money's worth. I often ask them, do you go to the liquor store, instead of buying your favorite bottle of wine, do you buy Everclear? Kind of doing the same thing. We shouldn't be focusing on that THC. Now, other things, most of you are probably familiar with CBD. Okay, CBD is non-psychoactive. has many other properties: anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, seizure reduction. This one of the things actually, there's a lot of hemp CBD out there where we just have CBD, which can be bought loads of places on the market, can be ordered online. But the going back a number of years, probably 4 years ago now, the European Pain Society recommended CBD before going to any opiates or prescription medications in that way for effective pain relief for patients. It's part of their algorithm for pain before opiates. We also have CBN. Just talking about this before, mildly psychoactive, but a sedative sleep aid. A lot of the people, one of the big, we have big reasons, pain, anxiety, but a lot of, especially older adults, are using cannabis for the sleep sedative properties for insomnia. If we focus on strains that have higher CBN in them, and it's really not strains. Funny thing about it, CBN is a breakdown product of THC, and so your older cannabis in New Jersey, cannabis has to be tested every 6 months. So your older cannabis that is a lot of times on sale in these dispensaries before it expires and needs to be and or needs to be retested, will start to get higher levels of CBN. You can also make manufacture products like gummies and other stuff with this. CBG, cannabigerol, non-psychoactive. Here it talks about antibacterial neuroprotective potential. Interesting thing, we see a lot of muscle relaxation, both smooth and skeletal muscle relaxation. CBG is sought after by a lot of GI patients. If we talk about colitis, other things for relief of symptoms, not for treating the overall, not for treating the underlying problem, but for providing relief of symptoms, this does wonderful. Even I recommend it to my patients that tend to get muscle spasms. I've had few patients with horrible spastic muscle issues, and for a variety of reasons. And strains that are higher in CBG as one of the cannabinoids tend to do very well. CBC, less often seen, non-psychoactive, again, anti-inflammatory, analgesic properties. And then with some others that, again, THCV suppresses appetite, stimulant, can be a stimulant of appetite at very low doses. And again, we're talking about that. And CBDV, where similar being studied in seizure disorders now. So a lot of different things in our cannabinoids. So now other things in there, and there are many other compounds, flavonoids, others that we're finding there, but the major things are that we're well aware of and are being studied well at this point are the cannabinoids and the terpenes. So terpenes are found in, I'm going to say everything. Oranges have terpenes in it, citrus terpenes. It's the flavoring essentially. But they also, cannabis terpenes, true cannabis terpenes have other effects. And you see here some of the more common ones. I'll say here and we could go, I'm not going to go through them each, but limonene tends to be uplifting in your sativa strains. You see a lot of limonene. It's citrus flavor, limonene, and tends to be a mood elevator, stress relief, and very good. But in those sativa leaning strains, whereas you look like carotene, beta carotene. Anti-inflammatory effects, other things, but that especially tends to be not as sedating but calming. Whereas you get like linalool is a more sedating, especially for people at nighttime, looking for sleep properties, anti-anxiety properties, other things. So I often tell my patients, because strains change, other things, I always want them to keep a journal. So when they find a strain that works for them, what were your top 3 terpenes? What was the cannabinoid profile look like? So if as strains change, they can find other strains that meet those same requirements. You'll all laugh if you ever go into a dispensary. The strain names are chosen, and they are all over the place and quite interesting. But understanding the profile of those strains is the most important thing from a patient perspective. it allows them to, again, recreate the effects they're looking for once they kind of dial that in and understand them better going on. So now, one of the interesting things, and whether aware of it or not, is we have what's called an endocannabinoid system, okay? Biological system helps maintain balance in the body, influence on mood, pain, appetite, sleep, immune function. We have this system in our body. We have natural compounds which act like cannabinoids that are in our body, and then we have receptors for these. The CB1 receptors found mostly brain nervous system. You can see here CB2 receptors are more peripheral, influence inflammation and immune response. And then we have other enzymes which specifically break down these endocannabinoids after they've done their jobs. With that, these endocannabinoids bind to those receptors, our CB1 brain, CB2 periphery, and help regulate pain, stress, and inflammation. The cannabinoids that are in THC, THC, CBD, they're cannabinoids. See, they interact with this system, and that's how we get a lot of the effects of this. That's why it is able to affect us in that way. As we talk about those, these see here the one anandamide, which is AE, is much easier for me to say. Bliss molecule helps with mood, especially tends to be a calming effect. 2AG helps regulate more pain and immune response. And then you see the enzymes, the FAH, the fatty acid amide hydrolase, helps break down that afterwards. And again, control these effects. And same thing with the MAGL, helps break down the 2AG after doing that. So these are important things in understanding this. We're learning about the endocannabinoid system all the time, and the effects also. We're seeing more also when I talked about flavonoids and isoflavonoids, their effect on this system. There's just some research being done in Europe and South Africa on these, on those specifically. So I'm interested in seeing where those go in the grand scheme of things. So this just a little diagram kind of showing where those receptors tend to reside and going on to make it. I'm always a visual person in the grand scheme of things. So as we talked before, cannabis as medicine, okay? I'm going to say minimally 1 in 11 patients are using cannabis in the state of New Jersey as we go on. Actually, I think that's low. We're seeing the largest growth in the over 60 age group. That age group specifically, we don't get as many people smoking. The younger age group, and I can say younger because that's I'm 60 myself. Younger age group tends to be more open to smoking, vaping, other things. This is generalizations. The older age group, we're seeing more topicals and edibles use. And edibles can be gummies, one of the most common. Chocolates. There are all sorts of things. Drops for water, other things that are legal in New Jersey. That allow people to ingest instead of smoking. A lot of reasons as we get older why I don't want to smoke and other things. But the realization is that over the course of a day in practice, let's just say you see 22 patients over the course of your day in practice. Minimally 2 of those regularly use cannabis. And that's why important thing is being able to have these discussions with them. In my prescribing practice, part of my working with patients is they need to disclose this. It has to be open to their primary care providers. I do not believe in doing this, and we'll talk about safety in this with cannabis as medicine, but we need that openness amongst patients and to go through. So when I say that, one of the things is, as providers, I think we need to have open, non-judgmental conversations. It was drummed into us for years that cannabis is bad, cannabis has no purpose. People were using it. Admittedly, once I people learned that I prescribed on the medical side, I had more people that I've known for years come out of the woodwork, letting me know, and now very open about it, because they knew, where my approach to it. That, oh no, I've been using for years. I've used my whole life. People that I'm going to say are my own age that I've used every day for the past 50 years. I go, God bless. Or older. I'm going to say a little bit older than me when I say 50 years. From teenage on. Well, we don't agree with the teenage part of it. It's they're still using to this day, and you would never know it. So most of them are not disclosing to providers. And I think we need to have these conversations with patients because there's a lot of safety factors in doing that. One of the things here we talked a little about the most common reasons in the legal market, we'll talk in a little bit about the illegal market and some of the issues there. But the common reasons in the legal market, pain, anxiety, PTSD, insomnia. Interesting enough, insomnia is not a qualified condition for a medical card in New Jersey. There's 20 different things. I'm not going to list them all out, but insomnia is not one of them. ADHD is not one of them. ADHD was, again, can be used for, can be treated with your sativa strains and does very well for patients. There's been a lot of proof of that in different studies out there, but again, it's not on the list of medical reasons in New Jersey that are allowed for a medical card. So one of the biggest things, and this is why I stress so much that we need to, is that we need to be aware and patients need to be aware of potential interactions. Those interactions are potentially huge. The two biggest things we see interactions with, one, there's loads of, and I'm going to say everything interacts. I'll just step back for a second. There's potential interaction between Tylenol and aspirin and other medications. So we need to be aware of that. But serious interactions, blood thinners tend to cause, serious interactions. You have serious interactions with cannabis. So for all of us, and we want patient safety to be top of mind all the time. If we need to put patients on a blood thinner for any reason, especially as we get older, if they're taking gummies at bedtime, stuff like that, we need to be aware of that and counsel them and try and come up and adjust one or the other and have that conversation with them. The other big category, which we tend to see and creates issues, is antidepressants. Lowering of seizure thresholds, problems there, and create issues with cannabis. And so those are some of the major ones. But there's interactions with everything. So in that, it's enough one of the best on the market. So I'll jump to the bottom real quick because I was trying to research and see if a lot of prescribers more and more seem to be on Epic because of being associated with large hospital systems. Others, Epic's drug-to-drug interaction checker does not address cannabis as a medication. Standalones, drugs.com. I forget and these links work if we get this out to you. I forget what it stands for, the CANDIR, which is run through Penn State, a program that they have. And I guess it's, cannabis interaction checker there. They are both readily available for free. You can, access them via any computer and go on. Interesting enough, the EMR I've used for years, Athena Health, does allow you to enter cannabis as a medication and do drug-to-drug interaction checkings on that. But like I said, Epic does not. I would check whatever EMR you're using and see if it does. Test that out. Encourage them to, because again, this is a patient safety thing. If approximately 9% of our patients minimally are using cannabis, it is a patient safety issue that we need to make sure we're aware of their cannabis use and checking drug-to-drug interactions. Um, so now talk for a couple minutes, and I'll leave some time for questions amongst the group, but high THC. So as soon as the adult use market opened up, we saw a big change in strains that were available and a push for higher THC. This is the most common thing that I hear from people is they want to get the most for their money. In that, again, everything's dose related, but the higher THC strains tend to cause more problems. They can smoke or use less and do that, like gummies. People would cut gummies in quarters, thirds, do whatever, but typically don't. And that's part of the learning curve and problems. You always go through start low and slow. You can always go up. It's tougher to go down. But this is where we need to educate our patients and make sure patients are aware of the benefits of the other cannabinoids, the CBD, CBG, and and the terpenes in there. THC is part of it. The other cannabinoids and terpenes alone do not work as well. But THC, especially those in the 10 to 12 range and the even the 17 to 22 range, there are strains out there that people need to be aware of and that will be much better and actually give them better desired effects to be functional than these higher THC strains that are being sold. And this is a little more of my personal pet peeve where now bud tenders, a 25-year-old bud tender does not understand what a 65-year-old is going through and really needs, and we need to educate there too. And that's part of the issues with the legal market right now. But one person at a time, and all of you on here tonight, I appreciate it. Hopefully opens your eyes a little bit, and as you start having these conversations and start having the conversations with people and doing your own research in terms of what's going to be the best for them to, again, be functional and relief of their symptoms that, for their medical conditions. So one of the things out there, and there seems to be articles all the time, hyperemesis cannabis overuse syndrome. Realize with this, and there was a recent study that came out, and if you want me to locate any of this, I didn't do a lot of footnotes on this. I know just as we're talking through, but I'm more than happy to find the studies for people and share it with everyone. But realistically, 0.1% of heavy long-term cannabis users are being afflicted by this, the cannabis overuse syndrome, where we're seeing nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. These are the ones that end up in the emergency department and can't stop vomiting. It's just time and kind of getting them through. Like it is even with opiates, we'll say, where you don't know who's going to become addicted versus others who can take an opiate and never have any addiction properties from it. Same thing here. It's who gets this overstimulation of cannabinoid receptors, but it's being seen with chronic high THC exposure, where we're seeing over 30% THC exposure is causing this. All of us, again, need to educate and push for go for strains that are more reasonable THC. And one of the things you'll hear, and I've seen signs, ad campaigns about this, and again, it is education. The THC that was available in the THC concentrations that were available in, say, the 60s and 70s were typically under 3%. Now we're talking where there's available up to 40%. Interesting. This going back about a month or two, I saw a strain that was now being available on the market that had over 40% THC. And when you looked at the cannabinoids, the other cannabinoids and terpenes, it was less than 1% each, which is again, just trying to hit that market where people, again, want the most for their money, but we're going to run into more problems. Okay. Other things, a little hemp-derived THC beverages. Still seeing a lot of this on the market. This was the one thing, if as we all follow politics, Mitch McConnell actually got this pushed through, that this is going away. When I say closing by the end of 26, I think that bill passed. I think that was in November, I would say. And so they gave 1 year for this to shut down. This goes a legal loophole in the Farm Act that's been out there for years. And if people find loopholes, they manipulate it. So is Delta 8 THC, especially from hemp-derived beverages. This what's being sold in will be sold in liquor stores, sold in corner delis, sold in gas stations, and you're getting, instead of 10 milligrams of THC is the industry standard for an edible or something in dosing in edibles in the legal market. In here, I've seen beverages that had 100 milligrams of THC in them, being available in corner markets and gas stations. Which, when you look, this has been up and been trying to fight this for years. I'm so happy to see them close this loophole down. A year is too long for it to take, but at least there's an end in sight where we're seeing kids, other stuff, able to get their hands on this easily in this legal loophole market and actually have problems. There was I'm going to say infamous up North Jersey where I believe it was a teenager, I believe it was a 15-year-old, got one of these drinks and ended up passing out in the woods in the winter and almost died of exposure. Luckily, someone found him, spent several days in the hospital and recovered, but not something we want to see. Let's talk legacy market for a moment, and that's still an issue. The legacy market is a nice way of saying the illegal market. It's the politically correct way these days of saying it. Completely unregulated. It's believed to account for up to 50% of cannabis use in New Jersey right now is where we're at. A lot of people still buy, and that's because of the I'm going to say how do I term it? The regulatory burden, testing, everything else, which I believe is needed and good for the regulated legal market. Everything in the legal market is tested, is highly regulated and going on. This adds up to costs, and so that's part of the cost of that market. But the legacy market, none of this is tested. There is molds, there is heavy metals, other things in this. I hate to admit there's even some bad players that have been found in the legal market in New Jersey with these heavy metals and other stuff. And the CRC is working on eliminating that, reducing that. I wish people were more upfront, transparent about things. But these are all issues that in this unregulated illegal market, it's the Wild West out there. And so you still have a lot of people buying in that market, which is concerning. I know the state, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission are working on these things. You, in your conversations with your patients, have these discussions about the pitfalls in that illegal market, in that legacy market, because that's where we still see issues, and they don't know what they're getting is the problem, where everything needs to be completely above boards. The lab testing available, any patient/consumer walks into any dispensary in New Jersey, they can request the lab testing on that batch of cannabis going on and completely understand it. Most don't. I wish they did, but they have access to it if they want it. One of the other controversies I'm going to say is the concept, and it's funny, I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a physician in New York earlier today about the idea of cannabis being a gateway drug. there's a lot of back and forth on this, gateway drug is that the idea that's a gateway to heavier drug use, cocaine and heroin and you name it, everything else under the sun. Uh, Time will tell with this, but what we're seeing is that this risk is not there in legal markets. Uh, the belief is that it's not a property of cannabis that's a gateway drug, the drug itself, but it's a property of the illegal environment. If you're using cannabis illegally, it's more likely that that same person selling you that may also be selling other illegal drugs in there. And so while we have a lot to learn and we're going through all of this, we have a lot to learn about this also, but the legal market is so highly regulated in there. It's, you look like growers, cultivators and manufacturers in New Jersey report to 7 different regulatory agencies in this state right now. So it is highly, highly regulated and gone through, which is good and creates safety for our patients. With this, and you've noticed I've talked a lot about safety, and Sue and I were talking about this before. I'm a big believer that right now this is a safer alternative than a lot of things we prescribed for years. A safer alternative than opiates in general, and we still need opiates. We can't do away with those. There's definite needs for them. Where's my thought? So, we need to go on and understand this. We right now, I believe, have a better solution than a lot of things we've prescribed for years for many people, not for all people. Cannabis is not for everybody. And again, there is no medication that works perfectly for everybody without side effects, without other things. So we need to be aware of this. I've had patients that were good candidates from, the perspective of from a medical side of yes, you could do well with this medication, who just didn't respond well to it. It didn't make them more functional. Uh, that's fine. It was worth trying because for the patients who do and get good benefits from it, we have something that tends to be safer. I am all for if we come up with safer alternatives in the future. God bless, that's even better. And then if we have something safer than where cannabis is right now, let's use that. But in the meantime, I think it's up to us as physicians to guide patients properly on this and make sure they understand the good and the bad of cannabis, drug interactions, and everything else, and that we're open about this. Said here, takeaway research is being done. There's more research coming out all the time. It's easily searched yourself for specific topics for your patients. I'm always willing to serve as a resource if you're looking for something. May not be aware, may be aware of research on it, and I'm more than happy to help research it because I learn all the time. Biggest thing, have open, non-judgmental conversations with your patients about cannabis. Just because you're talking about cannabis with them doesn't mean you're advocating that they use cannabis. Many of them are already. We need to have safety conversations with them though. We need to understand them and make sure that our prescribing patterns and how they're using it is done in safe ways. So with that, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There's my contact info if anyone wants it, but I'm going to stop sharing and let's go back to, do we have any questions on the floor right now? If you know how to raise your hand, do that. Otherwise, just unmute yourself and let's spend a few minutes talking about any issues or anything that you want. And if I see no questions, either I overwhelmed you or it's not that you guys know all this already, which is good. So.
I actually do have a quick question. And thank you. That was a great presentation. I assume for the medical professionals in the world and certainly in the room, and certainly for a layperson like me, I am wondering when you prescribe or order, do you actually issue an order for medical cannabis? And what's the process for having that filled? Or are you just recommending, giving guidance to a patient who can then go in on their own and essentially buy recreational cannabis? I'm curious how that works.
So interesting, and especially with the a medical card. I am my biggest thing in my practice. I spend an hour with every new patient. The biggest thing first is understanding what their issues are, making sure that it's appropriate. What we're trying to treat is appropriate for cannabis, and then understanding what other medications, what potential interactions, are there any risks, and then educating them. And a big part is the education. Even people who've been using for years aren't fully understanding and getting into this, and how to use, what to use. Again, starting at go low, go slow and low concept, and that is about being functional. My purpose in this is to recommend them for the medical marijuana program. I'm reliant, and this has been a little part of the issue in trying to do more education. And there's actually groups doing education out there. Some people that are actually creating businesses on educating consumers in the adult use market. But I'm recommending that they're appropriate for the program. I have to see them back, and typically I see people back uh, 3 months, and then after we start and going through. And part of that 3 months is on purpose, because when we talk about the endocannabinoid system, that typically takes about 6 weeks of somewhat regular use, and regular use kind of being, at bedtime every night is regular use. So, right. But where we see the endocannabinoid system kick in after about 6 weeks, and it all of a sudden they get more of a calming effect, and like things really start working better for them. I've heard this from so many patients, and but gives me a chance to further educate them and go on. I have the maximum is seeing patients back on a yearly basis, and that's once patients are firmly established. That's making sure they still need it. The conditions go. We see them back sooner if they're changing medications, if there's concerns, anything else. But it varies by patient. But no, I'm not prescribing any certain strain or anything else. I'm educating them in actually much more detail than even we went on potential strains and stuff that would work for them and what they need to be looking for. But that's really it. It is truly patient directed medication at this point, and a better educated patient. If for the older, remember the old Sims commercials, a educated consumer is their best customer. That's exactly where we are with this. The more I can educate people, the safer they will be consuming cannabis for their medical issues. And that's, again, big focus is safety, and we should all be on that. So, Josh, that was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great information. Thank you.
So, any other questions? Otherwise, if
One
none, I
one
appreciate
other
your time.
question from me, Dr. Kulin. In terms of what you recommend, in terms of, maybe you're seeing a 65-year-old with sleep disorder, and you're recommending a low THC strain, whatever the case may be. Do you get any other feedback in terms of what the patient actually got, other than what the patient feedback is? Like, in other words, does the New Jersey program give you, as a recommending physician, any feedback in terms of what your patient actually ordered and consumed?
No, it does not. We put limits, and that's one of the things in prescribing when we recommend for the program. We put limits on how much they can purchase in any 30-day period. But other than that, in the program, they have insight into what those purchases are. They can't go to multiple stores and buy over their limit or buy that. And the CRC has that. in the medical marijuana program has that insight, but we as providers do not. I'm reliant on my patients, but the patients are very open about it, and it's again, as I say, if we have these conversations, patients will be open about it. They're more than happy to talk as long as they realize, there's still a stigma, and I didn't really talk about that. There is still that, and especially, our age group, we grew up with that stigma. It was, reinforced for years and years in the war against drugs, reefer madness, the whole thing since, you go back, this started in the 40s, right essentially after World War II. And, so getting through, but people will be open about that and go through. I think there is plenty of tweaks that could be made to the medical market. I would actually, I'm hoping as the market matures in New Jersey, we see more even adult use cultivators. Well, one, there's more innovation in adult use cultivators than there is in the medical market because the medical is mostly MSOs, multi-state operators, the large corporate, will say, of the cannabis world. The smaller sites are doing that. Like there's we didn't get into this, like we talk about a 1-to-1 flower. Okay, 1-to-1 means that it's equal amounts of CBD and THC. That tends to be, there's only one strain on the market right now in New Jersey that's a 1-to-1 flower anymore. When it was only medical, there were several. ACDC, as we talk about the strain names. ACDC was one that was always a 1-to-1, and that was typically the 8 to 10 range. So 8 milligrams THC, 8 milligrams CBD, which is you're not getting the head high. You're typically getting what we refer to as a body high relief that way, and is very good for a lot of patients. And they sought this out. I ran into huge problems with my patients when the adult use market started, and we saw that disappear. The ACDC disappeared. The only one is a strain saltwater taffy that's on the market right now. That's a 1-to-1 and it's patients are buying it, and it's amazing that these larger places are not doing any of this because they're so focused on the high THC. So it's education. Maturing of the market, we'll see that other markets, if I look, Colorado, California, Massachusetts, Oregon, we've all seen over time this maturing of the market and a move away from only high THC strains. We're just in that uncomfortable place right now where the market's not mature. And part of when you and Josh approached me about doing this is, as trusted advisors to people, that we built up that trust over years, guiding patients to realize that, they should be going, the majority of our patients should be going for lower THC strains and looking at
CBD. Write a
CBD.
prescription.
What's that?
How do you actually write a prescription?
There is no prescription. I'm entering them into the program. There's a state site that I go on and I document their reasons for being in there, that I've examined them and that they are all the patients I see in the medical side. I have to obtain medical records to make sure their conditions are appropriate for that. So I'm really relying, let's say if you're their primary care provider or specialist, I'm relying on you and your diagnosis of them over time. I'm not changing that. If you say they have, chronic back pain due to disc disease and that they've been dealing with, and that's documented in there that's over a year, there's some certain low qualifications that go along with that. I'm certifying that.
The state site. How do you get into the state site, and do you need any qualifications to get into it?
Yeah, you need to register with the state as a provider. If you're looking to do that, can help you with websites, stuff like that. It's Josh or Larry can get you in contact with me, or Sue can. More than happy, because more of us that do that. But if you go to NJMMP, the Medical Marijuana Prescribing Program, you should be able to find that too. So just go on. If there's an interest, more than happy to help. The more of us who are there to help patients, the better. So Josh, did you have another question?
Yeah, I do. I do. Just making sure I'm not on mute. Not good.
If I can just say, anyone at 7:30, I, like Larry, am a firm believer in starting and ending on time. So if you want to hang on, I'm more than willing to. If you want to hop off, I do not take it personally, and go about your evening. So sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, and I'm sorry for pushing over the time limit, but this is just really valuable information. Unfortunately, I don't have the regulations, the Board of Medical Examiner and Cannabis Regulatory Commission rules in front of me. But I do remember in the early days of telemedicine, in like 2017, 2018, after the law that allowed it to be practiced in New Jersey explicitly, after that law was passed, there was a concern about using telemedicine for Schedule II prescribing. And again, I don't remember what the requirements were in the cannabis context, but I'm just curious, in your experience, is there a value to having patients in person, or do you use telemedicine essentially to the fullest extent that's permitted by the regulations and by the statute?
You bring up there's no quick answer. I'll give you my personal, and then I'll give you what I don't like about the industry in general on the medical side. I prefer in person. I prefer the interaction. That's just me. I do have some patients for a variety of reasons, mobility issues, other stuff that I've seen them in the office, but it is much easier to do follow-ups with them in their home setting and everything else. And so I do some telehealth. It probably is 15% of my practice for established patients, not a large percentage, but for some, it's just much easier. I'm not going to drag them into the office, especially some with, high mobility issues, MS, other things where it's okay, going on. Part of the problem is it's become very easy, and even there, I'll say they're still out there. Providers charging, initial visits $350, follow-ups are $200. My practice, initial visits are $100, follow-ups are $50. Okay, it's for me, it's a little bit about giving back and making sure people have appropriate access to medication that they need. But there's plenty of, like we've seen with telemedicine in general, and where you can get all sorts of medications just by go on, fill this thing out. A provider will kind of certify you and go on. The same thing is present in this industry in terms of medical marijuana prescribing. People can get on, never see a physician, in person, never even see a physician, see another medical provider, and go on. It's all online, which I think is a travesty. I'm a firm believer in, being in person, kind of laying on of hands, getting to know the person. It's about relationships and understanding your patients, not just giving them a card to help them purchase marijuana.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you.
all right. Everyone, there's loads of other controversies with this. If we ever want to talk about, if Larry and Josh ever want to talk about descheduling or reschedulization, that's probably at least a half hour, if not more, just topic all by itself because it creates issues. More than happy to again reach out to me if there's anything I can help with. It's just the more we know, the better, and I want patient safety to be primary for all of us. So again, the realization that our patients are using cannabis, we have to realize that we have to work with them so it's done safely. So, all right. If nothing else, thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. I went 4 minutes over, so I apologize, but thank you very much.